And welcome to another week of Roll of 24, the 25th week of 2026. This week covers 22 to 28 June 2026. This week was another rather eclectic week of different subjects for photography. One of the ones I did, Charlie and I had gone out to a place called Stillhouse Lake and captured a photograph of some men fishing down on a pier. Very interesting. After we did that, Charlie and I walked out into a field, and I was fortunate enough to capture another photograph of what's called a painted bunting. A very colorful bird and very pretty to listen to. On another day, Charlie and I went to go take a photograph of a half a water tower, which you'll see in the presentation. But on the way there, a Santa Fe train was parked on the side. Well, it was parked on the rails over in a small city called Nolanville, and there's actually a story about what happened while I was out there. Once we got out to the location where we were taking this picture of a half water tower, there was an ice house just out in nowhere. But it was amazing how busy that ice house was. For the 45 minutes Charlie and I were out there, probably 8 or 10 different people came to purchase ice. One of the few flowers remaining left in the subdivision to which I live, and very pretty, and that's an interesting story there. The purposeful picture this week was a studio shot that I set up in the garage of a stove with some fog. And while going over to a location to do some physical therapy for my left arm, which I injured a couple weeks ago, while waiting for my appointment, I was wandering around and captured this interesting bug on a cacti that was out front. And in addition to a sunset, Charlie and I went out. This was earlier before I captured the picture of the two gentlemen fishing, is a picture of a sunrise. And at the water tower location is a picture of a sunset. And as I just mentioned in the introduction, I injured my left arm a couple weeks ago, and so I've been going to physical therapy. And this was my first time over at this new location, so I got there early. And of course, we don't see you until your time. So went out back outside, walked around. They had a big thing of cacti out there. What's cool about this bug, one is the one right there in the center, but it's the little red ones that are above. I have no idea what they are. First of all, I didn't even know I captured them because they were so microscopic. I only saw that later in post-processing. And I did take this with my iPhone. Didn't have my cameras with me again. But just really cool little red bugs and the bug on the cacti. And so, once again, flowers are fleeting. Now that summer is here, it's the middle of July. These pictures were taken in June, 2 weeks ago. And so there's few and far between for flowers, but these were growing in my neighbor's yard. They're really interesting. They're almost like a primrose in a sense that they close up at night and then they open up all the way like this. And I took the shot, once again, rule of odds, got 3 flowers. But in the next image, this is 2A, the next one's 2B. You'll see that a bee has decided to come join me in my photography efforts of these flowers. Very interesting, just shooting away, and then all of a sudden you get back to post-processing and you're like, what happened? And so here is the second of the 2 images, 2B, and see in the middle flower what happened was a bee showed up. And I was focused on getting these flowers with the macro lens and not even aware that a bee had flown into the frame as I was taking this series of pictures. And this is a field bindweed. Wasn't sure if my Google identified it the first time, and so the next day I went back out just with the cell phone and took another picture of it. And sure enough, when I looked up for the information on the flowers, it came back as a field bindweed. Very interesting flower, and once again, it acts a lot like a primrose by closing up. So believe it or not, I'm still at that same yard where I just took the field bindweed, and I have no idea what these yellow flowers are. They've kind of eventually, no, the owner finally came out and cut the grass. So now I'm waiting to see if they grow back so I can get out there and take another picture with my phone and see if I can identify them. Anyways, I just got the camera real down low to the ground and aimed upward. This was a really nice image of the flowers growing throughout this front yard of these people's house. And it just, from this perspective, it looks like a large field when it's just a normal front yard. And so Charlie and I wanted to get out, and I wanted to capture a sunrise. They said it was going to be a partly cloudy day, so I figured I'd be able to catch some good sun rays coming in off the clouds. But as you can see here, the clouds were few and far between. This is a blue hour image. It's only 6:14. Charlie and I walked down to shore and got in position, got everything set up, and just sat around and waited. We got there about 5:45, so we had to wait about 30 minutes before we started getting the sunbeams coming up over the horizon the way we wanted them. Just loved how the colors during this blue hour came out as you look at the pond of lake. And this is the second of three of the images. This is the very beginning of golden hour. And once again, now I'm a little bit to a different perspective here on this one. I moved the camera to the left some, and the clouds were just barely coming over the horizon. It's now 6:37, so I've waited about 20 minutes to capture this image. And I just loved how I was able to frame this up with the rock along the shoreline, the weeds, not sure what they are. And as the sun came in, I just liked how the clouds were at a slight V angle as the sun broke and crusted right through the center of them in this image. And here is the last of three images, and I had taken more at that other position, and then I shifted it over. I wanted to get the hill over at the 2 o'clock position, and now we are at the end of golden hour. It's now 6:54. So just for these three photographs, I was out there for about an hour drive out, hour drive back. So when you set out to do one of these things, you do plan for a whole day of adventure. And not even realizing it, Charlie was on a short leash, but there was nobody anywhere near this early except for a couple boaters putting their boats in the water and going off to fish. So I did not even realize that I'd captured Charlie in this image over at the right-hand side at the 3 o'clock position. So Charlie and I had finished taking the sunrise pictures, which was the primary purpose I'd gone out there to capture. And we repositioned probably about just a quarter mile away over to this area, one where the bathrooms are at, and two is where there's a small fishing dock out there, just specifically for fishing. And while getting out of the car, I saw these two gentlemen down there fishing and pulled out the camera. And I'm using the 100 to 500 because now I'm going to go out and try and do some birding. And I just barely crested. But after a couple of pictures, one gentleman on the left evidently saw me capturing images of him and his friend down there fishing, and he's looking straight at the camera. And so after capturing the fisherman down there, one putting some bait on his hook, we wandered probably about a couple 100 feet over to a field, and I had heard some birds further into the distance, probably about 400 or 500 feet away. And so before we started our journey through the field to where these trees were at, that seemed like where the birds were at, and I thought they'd be great trees because they were all dead. And because now that all the foliage is out, it's impossible to capture a bird for me in a tree. But they did, and you'll see shortly that I'm sitting on this dead branch. Anyways, I just love this field of yellow flowers. You can see most of the petals are falling down, so it's the end of spring. So as you just saw in that brief video of the Bewick's wren, kind of hard to try and capture by video with that 800 millimeter lens at full extension. It becomes a little unwieldy for me. I did turn the stabilization on inside of the video maker that I use for this. So anyways, here is a picture of said Bewix wren, and I also have another one following shortly. But not very colorful birds, but just very interesting to listen to. They were all over the place, but trying to spot one and capture it is very difficult that day. And so here is another image of the Bewix wren. And as you saw in the video, the wren was over to the left of the painted bunting, which is going to follow in another image shortly. But it seems like these two play along fairly well, even though the Bewix wren started moving up towards the painted bunting until it flew away. And I just like, yes, it seems a little blurry, but I just loved the environment where I captured it on this branch of this dead tree that I was fortunate to find, because all the other trees around were full of foliage and almost impossible to capture an image. And so here is a photograph of the painted bunting that we just saw in the video. And that's one of the things I always struggle with. Video first, photograph, video. Because a lot of times I'll be excited because I captured a cool video, or not video, but a photograph. And then I'll forget to do my B-roll of capturing a video. And these things were jumping around from point A to point B pretty quick. They wouldn't stay in one place probably longer than 30 seconds. Though this one was nice and accommodating and sat on this branch probably for about 2 minutes. And I think I probably got about 40 or 50 frames just because they were coming in and then disappearing for a period of time. And Charlie and I were just standing in the sunshine. So that was the second of two brief videos that I was able to capture of this painted bunting. After this image right here, they pretty much flew away for the remainder of the morning. You can see now it's now 7:36. Charlie and I have been out here at this location for nearly 2 hours and moving along. So after we finished with this painted bunting here, and once again, I got fortunate that there were 2 dead trees, one standing, one laying down on the ground, to catch the pose of these birds. And once again, none of these kind of birds are around my house. I'd get a cardinal or a blue jay once in a while, but this thing is just multicolor and just really pretty to look at, in my opinion. Yeah, so as you just saw in that video, thank goodness the grass is so tall. These deer are, what, 4 or 5 feet tall, and Charlie's down to the ground, so he didn't see them, thank goodness, because I didn't want him running through the whole wilderness preserve after these deer. But yeah, I was able to lock on focus at the very beginning of that, and then as the deer were running away, the camera decided to focus on the reed, whatever that plant was in front. And so focus breathing, sometimes using the R5 Mark II and the 200 to 800, yeah, you get some focus breathing in there that's hard to overcome. But here is the still photograph of those said deer. And so this week, my purposeful picture here is of a fireplace, and you can see by my thumb at the 3 o'clock position how small this fireplace actually is. And I'm going to be presenting 3 images, and this gave me an opportunity to play with my smoke machine. And I also had to go out and so the lovely bride have the stove that she bought at a flea market sometime in the past, But I had to go out and buy the little bags of flour and a few other doodads to complete this image. And so what's interesting in this one, this is one of the test images I actually took the night before, after I got everything set up, and you can see it's already 10:30 at night, and I'm like, Yep, I'm done. Just close the garage door and we'll resume again tomorrow. So this had no background, just the garage wall and the tabletop, but I was able to get into Photoshop and remove the background. And then I thought, you know what? I've got this other image that I took many months ago. This is my sensor dot image. And I was like, how can I impose that in the back? And to me, I think it just looks cool because it looks like a spotlight on the stove. And so this is the second of the three images. This one, I was using a white background, something like maybe you'd see in a catalog from the 30s or 20s, whenever this stove originated. And we keep the stove somewhere in the backyard so you can see the rust stains on it. And I found some twigs in the front yard and put those inside the opening of the fire pit. And I struggled for a while to get the the fog to properly come out of the vents on that side. But in the end, I thought this was pretty good. I just really wasn't happy with the white background and this perspective. So that's in the next image. And in this short video, this is me trying to, I haven't used the fog machine I bought several months ago. I think I've only used it twice. But that was my whole idea. So I got everything set up, took some test shots, and this is fairly dark. But you can see when you put the fog into the machine, it sinks down. I had it set to dry ice at one time, but you can see here I have it moved over to fog. But it took me a while to try and determine how much to push in. And here you can, through the vents, you can barely see the lights that are coming on here. I only had a single little LED light in on that one. But on the next one, you're going to see I actually got some Christmas lights from Lovely Bride that were batteried, and I was able to shove into that little compartment on that stove. And so while out there, it's like, what is going on with this fog? It's not fogging. And so I gave just a really gentle breeze, and it's amazing how much fog kicked up out of the toy. And so here is my final purposeful picture for the week that I challenged myself on. And so it was basically take something old. And so the wife had this old stove that she'd bought at a flea market, and I had this great idea, went into the garage, turned it into a studio, did some shopping on an online store, got some of the other kids' toys, they're 1/12, and got some Christmas lights to put in there to make the fire effect and the logs coming out. And I just really, in the end, loved how this one turned out to emulate a wood stove. Maybe not so much smoke, but it still looks cool to me. Still sticking with the eclectic theme of my photography is the next day. It's now the 27th of June. And Charlie and I wanted to go take a picture of half a water tower that I had seen the prior week. And while Charlie and I were driving out there through this little town of Nolanville, about 5,000-6,000 population, there was this BNSF train sitting on the side of the rails. And if you look past the engines, you can see some military vehicles. They look like Bradley fighting vehicles. Anyway, so I'm set up over there, pull out the lens, start taking some pictures, and lo and behold, what happens? A sheriff deputy pulls up right on the other side of the rails, and I couldn't see through their side window, but they stayed there the whole time I stayed there. I don't know if they were thinking I was going to do something to the military vehicles, because there was nobody in the train. It was just parked there, but not the first time I've had sheriff deputies show up to a photo shoot and just stand and observe. So this seems like one of those episodes of Train, Planes, and Automobiles, because that's going to come up shortly here. But I turned around, got ready to go back into the car. I actually had Charlie tied up to the bumper, so he had his 16 feet to move around while I was out there paddling around taking pictures. And the Nolanville Fire Department had this small little fire truck parked right there, and I was down a little bit. I did not have to crouch down. It's just how the parking lot slants downward. And I turned around and I saw this fire truck and the sun setting, and I was like, you know what? That looks like a very interesting picture. So I captured several frames of that, and here's one of them. And as I mentioned back in the introduction, the primary purpose for this trip was to go out there and capture this half a water tower. I had seen it the week before from coming back from a town called Temple along the back roads here on 439 Farm to Market Road. And it was just really, I'm like, what's going on here? And there's some scaffolding and stuff down on the bottom. So I don't know if they're dismantling this water tower or what. It's rather rusty. So I cannot see it being repaired. So I just wanted, I was like, okay, I better get back out there before it goes down. The sun was setting, and this was a 4-frame pano in the vertical mode that I captured here. So this is one of those images that I don't do very often, but if you paid attention back in the previous 2 videos and the photograph, is just the amount of visual pollution that we take for granted as we live our day-to-day lives. And here is, I put this image over into Photoshop, and I removed everything except for the 2 vehicles and the water tower. And I just love how this image is so clean. But once again, now it's pretty much just an image. It's not a photograph per se, because I did take out all of the distractions, which you're going to see again here in 20B that comes up next. So that last image, I called that a clean street, and I'm calling this one visual pollution. And it's just amazing how we live our days and we go through life, and we take all of this visual pollution for granted. And I was just amazed when I went through and put that image into Photoshop, how many distractions it identified being in the image. And now when I go out and look around and look at the streets and everything throughout my town and other places now, I just notice more. I'm more acutely aware of all of the, I don't want to call it garbage because it's needed for our society to exist, but just all the visual pollution that is out there. So here is one of those printed images from the introduction, and this is an ice house, and this thing's been out here for about 20 years as the town of Nolanville has so slowly grown. This is on the north end right next to that Farm Road 439 that runs east and west on the southern borders of Fort Hood. And I was like, does this thing make any money? And we showed up, and in the next 45 minutes or so, like I said, there were 8 or 10 people that showed up. An RV showed up where the people got out to, I guess, restock their coolers to continue their trip down the road. But I just thought this was really an interesting image. So after capturing the picture of the ice house, I turned around, and the sun had gone down far enough that there was not even any spackling of light on the water tower. So I was getting ready to, all right, let's go home. And turned around, and this is a clear blue sky per se, but as the sun was setting, I guess the Sahara dust or sand that blew in last week from Africa turned the sky this brilliant orange. And so repositioned the camera around and took some photographs, did some exposure bracketing so I can capture one of the better ones. Captured some sunbeams here. I did have to go to f/22 to capture this. So what was pretty interesting, so I got this big old 100 to 400 or 500 set up on a tripod capturing pictures of the water tower. And I probably had 4 or 5 different people who were turning up the street, not going the direction this car is, but the other direction. And they'd look over and they were actually hollering out, "Hey, take a picture of me. Hey, what's going on?" And I'm like, I'm glad I brought Charlie because I'm pretty much out in Nowhereville. And but anyways, this car was passing in. Once again, I was doing exposure bracketing, and so I actually captured one of the front of the car, the sun on the windshield, and I just loved how this one, where you can see the image of the lady inside and the sun coming through the window. And here is the last image for this week's roll of 24, and that car had passed by, and the sun was still slowly sinking into the western horizon. And I'm not going to call these power poles leading lines, but you got the road that leads back to the power poles, and then the power poles take your eyes over to the right. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I did capture this one car with its lights, but it was starting to get dark, and so I was like, as you can see here, the camera automatically moved the ISO to 8,000 ISO, and I was shooting this at 1/3200 because I had to open up the aperture so much in order to capture this. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of Roll of 24 for the 25th week of 2026, covering the period 22 to 28 June 2026. If you enjoyed this presentation, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next Wednesday. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episodes of Roll of 24 for this week of... What was this week again?